Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John Becker. We're talking about City Council in the city of Knoxville and a major turnover for that body. The last meeting ever for 5 of the 9 people on that body. And we are going to talk in particular with council members who represent District 3 and District 6 this morning. We'll take a full screen so you can see exactly where they are right now. But those districts are turning over, as are the other 2. And those members of City Council are leaving because they are term limited. And we are joined this morning, thankfully, by 2 veterans. Seema Singh, nice to have you with us, District 3, and Councilmember Gwen McKenzie of District 6. Good to have you both on.
Good morning.
We'll get to questions in a minute. First, let me introduce our panel. On the end there is Don Bosch. He's a Democrat, runs his own law firm.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Susan Richardson Williams is a Republican, runs her own PR firm.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Well, let's talk Councilmember Seema Singh. Let's start with you and what it was like for 2 terms on this body. You have been through a lot. Both of you pandemics, both of you lots of turmoil when it comes to rezoning. What stood out to you about your service?
Probably the 18 months of COVID where we were doing all of our meetings online. That was a really interesting time. I don't think any other council members have ever gone through that.
No.
Yeah.
That was
We hope
extraordinary.
nobody else does again.
Yes,
so.
exactly.
Right. But that was extraordinary.
Councilmember McKenzie, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I happen to have been the pandemic vice mayor at that particular time. And so not only were we dealing with a global health pandemic, but also a national racial pandemic, because remember that we were on the heels of George Floyd at that particular time. So there were a lot of things going on across the country and in the city at that particular time.
We'll get to specifics from Don and Susan, but just let me start with a general question. Aside from the pandemic, what stands out to you most about your service?
Well, I'll say my journey from 2017 to now, especially in my district, of course, we had a lot of wonderful things that happened, a lot of great development downtown that came through East Knoxville as well, but then also we had that cycle of increased violence. In East Knoxville, specifically dealing with children. And so the things that we needed to put in place, and I really appreciate the mayor's administration and my colleagues on council for the investment in violence prevention and interruption. And so those things were very, very significant.
Councilmember Singh, how about you?
I think from when Gwen and I were elected to now, not why I think diversity is important. It's not about how we look, but it's the experiences that we bring. Our council was very different than what's been in the generations past. We were there were 5 women, 4 men, the first African American, the first South Asian. There were a lot of changes of perspective added to council, and I think it's kind of the same journey that Knoxville has taken from when I moved here in the 70s to now.
Well, one of the issues that has just plagued our city and continues is homelessness. And I know it's something that's been very close to your heart, Seema. Have we made any progress in the 8 years? I would ask both of you that. Have we made progress there?
No.
Yeah.
The longer answer, that is my biggest complaint about Knoxville is that when I got on council, I could have afforded a house. Now I could not.
Yeah.
I do not believe that our council has done enough to work on the regulation and work on zoning and work on welcoming the people who need homes.
And affordable
we just
housing.
haven't done enough. Yeah, all ends of the spectrum. I mean, if we had housing that was even market rate, there would be people who weren't renovating houses from $150,000 to $500,000. I mean, there's so many places we could have plugged in, and we kept saying that we were going to. But yeah, I've got a lot of feelings about that we did not do enough.
Yeah,
and I hope the council coming up does that work.
Gwen?
So what I'll say is, I think that we did have some improvements initially, but I don't think that we anticipated the amount of the growth and the trajectory of the homeless population. Because now what we saw, as Seema talked about, was we saw people who at one point were the working poor, who were now living in their cars or living on couches. And so I do think that moving forward, we have to have a more strategic approach as to how do we deal with that. And this homeless situation that Knoxville had really, I think, started when we closed down Lakeshore. Those were our chronically mentally ill patients, and now we really did not have a space for that population of people to go. And so I do think that there's a lot more that we can do and we can get accomplished.
But you just touched on that is a segment of that population, but that population is so much broader than just those suffering from mental illness.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the working poor that you just pointed out that we're living in less expensive housing, but are now living in their cars or couch surfing, and we could have a whole show about this, and I appreciate your honesty about what you just said. But let me change topics, and I'll start with you, Gwen. I do a lot of work with the Knoxville Police Department and with their officers, and I'm curious, because you mentioned it on the onset with the violence and the programs. Have you seen a positive progression with KPD and law enforcement? And I'll ask you the same thing in a moment, Seema, since you've been on council.
Since I've been on council, yes, I have seen we have made some positive improvement. I think there's been a lot of intentionality, especially under Chief Noel's watch, of them being visible, them building relationships in the communities, especially those that are experiencing the most violence. The TLC project, I think, is really done a lot of good to help that. However, I don't want to dismiss the fact that we already had some officers historically who were already ingrained in our community, in the East Knoxville community. Officer Gwatney, who passed away unfortunately recently, was very well beloved and was well trusted in our community. And so I think he helped open that door along with some other officers.
Jasmine Reed, I think of in your community, who's delightful.
Absolutely. So yes, I do think that we've made some improvements. Are we, is it perfect? Nothing's going to be perfect, but I appreciate the intentionality.
How about you?
On the
KPD, and whether there's been a 8-year improvement or whether it's been stagnant, sort of like the
I
homeless
think
problem.
we responded to George Floyd. I think that we paid attention to the racism issues and the police brutality, and I think Chief Noel has been addressing that. I'm very impressed by him. But it's funny, I got a question from a journalist a couple days ago. Could you give me some information about the violence response? And I'm like, which one? Co-response model, alternative response, or the violence intervention? And it takes all of this stuff to be addressing it. And I do think we need to work on the violence intervention piece. We had a real issue in the city with addressing that and funding it.
We've got to take a quick break here on Inside Tennessee. Back with more from these two veteran council members outgoing in the city of Knoxville. Back with more on what they see as our future after this. Two veteran city council members, our guests this morning, Gwen McKenzie, Seema Singh. They are outgoing because they are term limited. Susan?
Both of you have been on council 8 years, and you've passed budgets, you've appropriated funds for all kinds of programs. Did we need a city tax, and did we need a tax increase? It failed. Citizens voted against it.
The sales tax.
Sales tax, but it's a tax increase for the city. Did we need that? Do you see a need in the future? Is that coming soon?
I think it's something that we do need, if not now. I think as the city level, local level is funding more and more things that the federal level used to, that is something that we should probably put in place. Not necessarily, what I worry is that not necessarily for parks and greenways, but for things, for social services needs.
Affordable housing?
Yes.
For instance.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Gwen? Did you support the tax increase?
So for me, I thought it was a good idea. I think the timing of it was just off because there was so much uncertainty that was going on from a national level. Again, we have a lot of people who are living in poverty, a lot of people who just did not know, if they were going to keep a job because so many things are being scaled back. And so I do agree with Seema that at some point we may have to revisit that. Now that's just from the city. Now the county's a whole nother story, right. So I won't go there.
Right.
So Seema, what's the one thing you wished you'd been able to do while you're on council that you didn't get to do?
My issues are housing, expanding housing. And what I'm talking about when I was saying that we have not worked, we haven't been very effective on the homelessness issues and things. That's not just Knoxville. I'm not dissing Knoxville. It is a nationwide thing, but Knoxville is one of the places that has not addressed housing as much as some other cities have.
You have sometimes had a contentious relationship with Mayor India Kincannon on occasion.
Occasionally.
Do you lay that at her feet and her administration's feet? the difficulties we've had in progressing in housing?
Not just her. This takes, I mean, it was all 9 council members. We were all together. Of course, she's the strong mayor, so there's a lot of that. I mean, when I first got on council, we were doing recode. And what I knew about that is that it was a living document. I don't see it as a living document right now. The only changes we've made, sorry, I nerd out on this, is the middle housing piece. And that's just very tiny.
So Gwen, the one thing you wished you'd been able to do that you didn't get to?
So, and what I didn't get to do, it's going to happen. It's just not going to happen on my watch. But I wanted to see more investment and reinvestment on Magnolia. What we did get to accomplish was the infrastructure piece.
It's happening,
of it.
That's right.
Yeah, it's starting, you know, and it's just going to take time. I think within the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, we'll see it. I do think that the stadium is absolutely going to help drive businesses and developers to come back into East Knoxville. And some of those anchor businesses, we need those. I mean, most of you guys can remember when Magnolia was thriving. You know, we had restaurants, we had a lot of different things, and so I wish I could have really seen that on my watch and helped to drive that. But I do think the things that I did are going to lay the foundation for that.
You mentioned the stadium, and we're about 6 months into the opening. We've been through baseball, we've been through soccer. How would you grade it in terms of performance in the economic health and improving it in our city? Councilmember Singh?
I think it's had a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm. There are a lot of complaints about parking, about the old city vendors not getting business. So we'll see. It's pretty early still.
Will those just be growing pains, you think?
I think so. I hope so.
How about you, Councilmember McKenzie?
I'll say the same thing. I think they're growing pains. Change is difficult for people, and so I think that I will agree parking is a little dicey. It's not as convenient for people, but I'm really pleased with having it there. I know that the taxes have exceeded, their sales taxes have exceeded what was projected, and so I think that we're going to see some really great benefits down the road.
Seema, you volunteered to run for a state legislature when we thought Gloria Johnson was only going to run for the U.S. Senate. And then you decided not to when she decided to run for both seats. Do you see another elective office in your future? I'll ask both of you that, actually.
We'll see. I'm going to sit back. I need to relax for a while and look at, go back to my day job that I love doing. Yeah. And we'll just see how things unfold. I'm not
counting
yes
it out.
No.
What about you, Gwen?
Well, I always say, people have told me never say never.
Right.
But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time off and spend it with family, vacation a little bit, because this is, again, we've had a tumultuous 8 years. I mean, a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And so, and it does not just stop. It's 24/7. My phone has actually rung at 4 o'clock in the morning before.
You were on a council that is supposed to be nonpartisan, but we tend to see partisanship infiltrate, I'll say that, in some of the discussions. What's your advice to the people who are taking your seat now to engage with people that they may disagree with, but also in a way where, to quote Howard Becker, the other fellow might be right?
I don't think partisanship has a space on City Council. As I say, garbage pickup and potholes are not partisan. So I think keeping that out of our conversations, and I think we've done a very good job with that. It has not been our main focus. The city has been our focus.
How about your advice to you?
Absolutely. My advice is what I think that this council has tried to project is let's all do the right thing for the right reason. And we can agree to disagree and still walk away being civil and cordial and doing what's right for the people of Knoxville.
Gwen McKenzie, Seema Singh, we appreciate your service and so many years, 8 of them to this city. Thank you very much for that service.
Thank you.
We're back with more of our conversation with another outgoing member of City Council. That is Tommy Smith, and that's next. We're back on this Sunday morning with Vice Mayor and City Councilman Tommy Smith, who is outgoing after 2 terms. It's good to have you with us. And let's talk first about your most important job as a council member, the way you see it.
To establish trust with people and represent what they want. You get all kinds of comments from all different places, but you have to be able to listen well and balance a bit of reality inform people, and then try to get done with what they think will improve their lives.
And in your 2 terms as South Knoxville's representative, District 1, I know that covers some of Fort Sanders as well.
Yeah.
What's been the hardest part of the job?
I think when you come into office, you think you know what the community wants. And so you've got a checklist of, I know what is needed on Chapman Highway and the South Waterfront and urban wilderness. I think one of the challenging things are the things that are a little unplanned. So COVID, bridges that are closed and need to be reopened, and some other inflation and housing costs. So you have to have a balanced mind to kind of weather those unplanned things, as well as get done the things that you know people specifically want.
So our longtime City Council member Marshall Stair said on his way out, one of the things that council does that a lot of people are interested in when it's happening to them but don't really pay attention to is zoning. Would you agree with that? He said that's just a core principle of what you deal with on any given meeting.
Yeah, and I think people in the public sometimes underestimate the value of that, but when it's not next door to you, you quickly learn how important land use and zoning is. And for me, not just for South Knoxville, but in the city as a whole, there's an importance of preserving what's special now and making room for new. And so that balance is really important. And there's really a good kind of push and pull when it comes to land use. And that's really where the rubber meets the road.
We've seen a big emphasis on the transformation of South Knoxville, in particular the South Waterfront, with housing and greenways and amenities there. What can you say about what it looks like today and what it will look like 5-10 years down the trail?
Well, I think the good thing about South Knoxville, particularly the South Waterfront, is that there's a vision plan. So that kind of sets the guardrails for what can happen, good, bad, what's not wanted, what we do want. The most important thing I think coming down is what's called the downriver plan. So the west side of Chapman Highway down along the river has not been developed as fast as Sevier Avenue and other parts. And so I think the next decade is going to be about the development that's really carefully and thoughtfully implemented in the downriver area.
I want to talk a little bit about politics on council. This is supposed to be a nonpartisan body, but often we see partisanship creep into it, as we did during the election. What can you say to our viewers about partisanship in local government?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily healthy, and I think the reality is when you canvass and knock on hundreds and hundreds of doors, people really care about the half mile around their daily experience. We obviously care for one another, and we can't understand everybody exactly the same way because of where they live or you live, but people really want their daily quality of life to be improved. And for me, when kind of the noise of national or state or local politics gets loud, I try to go back to the doorstep where somebody said, you know, that thing at the end of the road really impacts my life. Can you make that better? I think that is the best way to lead and represent people, even when it gets loud.
We talked about some of the challenges. Is there a signature project or effort that you really think, hey, I'm so glad I was a part of that?
Yeah, I think 2 things. One represents preservation, the urban wilderness. Not only did we keep South Knoxville green, we grew the preservation area for that. So that balanced with the second part, which is new. So Sevier Avenue, the South Waterfront, I come back to that, as well as Chapman Highway and a lot of the new businesses that have come up there, is adding new amenities while preserving things. Those 2 things together, I think, is something I'm really proud of, the balance, because depending on the person and depending on the day, some people don't want anything new and some people want something new. And so balancing those is very hard, and I'm really proud to leave with, I think, the community's trust in that balancing act.
What's next for Tommy Smith? Your name has been out there in terms of a potential mayor run for the city of Knoxville. What are your thoughts?
I have considered it, and I will continue to consider it. Right now, I've got 4 constituents at home that really demand some things from me, and so I have 2 kids in elementary school and 1 in middle school, and my wife, and I'd like to spend a substantial time with them. So I'll continue to consider it. I would like to serve. You know, you'd go through this and you represent people, and you learn a lot, and you really wanted to put it to good use. So I'm not done serving Knoxville, either on somebody's team or serving another office or running for something. I'll stay involved.
Vice Mayor Tommy Smith, we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. We're back on Inside Tennessee with our talk around coming next. Don and Susan back with us. Again, we're ushering in a new council, 5 of the 9 seats turnover. Those are new faces, people who haven't served before. Don, the mayor needs to work with them. What do you expect the next year is going to look like?
It's going to be different. It's going to be transitional, I think. You've got all these new council people. You've got the last year of India Kincannon's term. I believe it'll be the last year. It's not 2 years,
Yeah.
but winding down, and so it will be different. And remember that the next time out we lose the other 4. So within 2 years we're going to have a brand new council with the 5 coming on now, 4 later, a new mayor. This is going to be a transitional time, but a good time. Good voices, good people have been elected this time as well.
And Susan, you were making the point off camera that you really feel like City Council lives up to that nonpartisan marker.
I do. Not so much a county commission. We pretty much know their politics and they discuss it quite often. But council, I think, has been very nonpartisan in all of their efforts, and I think that's been a good thing.
Yeah, and interestingly, City Council is primarily Democrats, even though they run as nonpartisan. County Commission is primarily Republicans, and they're the ones that carp the most. And just like Susan said, I find it interesting. Be happy you have the majority on County Commission.
I want to switch topics. We heard some sad news this week. Chief Deputy Lyon with the Knox County in the hospital in ICU earlier this week, and he is one of the candidates for sheriff in the coming year. A handful are out there. Don, what does this do to what people are talking about?
Well, first of all, I know Bernie, and I hope for his recovery, and from what I understand, it may be serious, but we have to wait and see. They haven't announced, so I want to give the family deference and hope. But if Bernie Lyons cannot run, or chooses not to run, it does shake up the dynamic, and so that leaves 3 candidates. That leaves certainly Mike Davis, former DEA agent, leaves Brent Gibson, and then leaves an additional candidate, and
JJ.
Oh, JJ. Oh, how can we forget JJ?
How could you forget?
JJ. And so we were talking about this off camera. I don't know if this helps JJ or not. I think it does, but JJ has the most name recognition, but he has a lot of negative name recognition. And Knox County has shown in this community we do not like recycled politicians. Tim Hutchison couldn't win dog catcher after he was through as sheriff, and he was at one point the most powerful politician in Tennessee, Knox County. Lee Trammell didn't win, after coming off a county commission. And so I don't know if JJ is going to come back through. He also has a lot of negative attention right now because of his former narcotics head under federal indictment about to be sentenced, where JJ was named, by reference in that indictment, that factual basis, and I don't think that's going to help him. So who does that favor now? I think it probably favors Brent Gibson, and he was longtime chief deputy captain, long history in the department, former UT football player, and it probably helps Mike Davis. Different. He also came out of the sheriff's department, but then joined DEA, and he's lesser known. So
but there may be time for somebody else to get in.
There may be, and you might see Aaron Yarnell.
If Bernie isn't able to run or decides not to run, there's still time.
And for our viewers who aren't familiar, Susan, this is a powerful job.
Oh yeah.
At one time, as you mentioned,
most powerful politician.
Tim Hutchison was definitely the most powerful politician in the county.
All right, let's go. We've got about a minute left. I want to shift to UT football because both of you are
always
paying
political.
close
Always
attention.
fun.
And this shakeup with some players not playing in the bowl game, and some fans, Susan, saying, should we even go to a bowl game?
Well, I hope they'll go, because if we're participating, we need fan support and we need player support. We've already heard about 8 or 10 players that are not going to play because they're either going to transfer in the portal or look at transferring, or they're going up for the draft. And so this definitely impacts, the game. I despise what's happened in college football with this transfer portal, particularly in the NIL. I don't like any of it, but it's what we have to live with.
It is growth. I don't despise it, but it's growth. We have to work through this, just as we talked about with our outgoing city council people. There are growing pains in this system, and we are going to have to revamp this system to make it work better.
Next week, the man Susan calls the most powerful politician in Tennessee.
And he
on
is.
Inside Tennessee.